It's the first episode of March. And what does that mean? Well, time for spring football. And I know everybody who listens to this show loves when we talk about spring football or when I talk about spring football. But I decided this go round for our spring outlooks. Let's not do it alone. Let's do it with our reoccurring guest correspondent, Trent Ritchie, and we are going to just talk two teams from the SEC today, two teams from the ACC today to kick us off with our spring football coverage and our spring outlooks. Hey, guys, take a seat for a little bit because for March, April, and May, or going into mid-May, it's all about spring football here for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Podbean, or Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday. Just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage and some spring football coverage presented by us. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. Just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram and TikTok at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow, like the pages there. You're going to get clips and wild takes from me, the prodigy of college football, on all those platforms. Just type in at Pigskin_Frenzy and hit that follow button. And then the website, www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Guys, we are super excited to be joined by our real guest correspondent. I mean, he's been appearing on, I would say, throughout, previewing a little bit of a kind of recapping the quarterfinals of the college ball playoff. And even before that, we were talking about, we recapped, I believe it was like week 11, week 12, around there is when we recapped, the top games there in that weekend around November. And you know what? I said, we're going to do spring outlooks together. I just have a feeling because I see the vision. I usually do it by myself, but I think it'd be fun if we got Trent back on for spring outlooks. And without further ado, we have our guest correspondent, ladies and gentlemen, Trent Ritchie. Golf clap, ladies and gentlemen. He is on.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm very excited about this.
Dude, I'm pumped too, man. And by the way, congratulations. I just wanted to say that one more time on the air. We're shouting him out. Congratulations. If you don't know what's going on with Trent Ritchie, just go and give him a follow on Instagram, and you'll see that post and you'll know why. So,
appreciate it,
guys. We're ready to rock and roll for spring football. And I know that when we do our spring outlooks, we do three things that we want to see from each team, and we're going to still do that theme. But the only difference is Trent's here, and I am pumped about that. So we're going to kick it off with the SEC, man. And I know that we've been hyping it up. We hyped it up on episode 301. Go back and watch that episode. This is episode 302. But we hyped up the spring outlooks. We're pumped. We're fired up. Let's kick it off with the ACC. Alabama is what we're kicking it off with. And I said that we were going to do a spring outlook on Alabama. I said that Alabama was a team that we need to dive into, especially with the 2025 season. So we can slightly recap the 2025 season a little bit. What happened there? Well, they started off hot. I mean, I wouldn't say directly started off hot. It's not scratch out the Florida State loss, but they did kind of start off hot. They beat Georgia week 5, and that's a ranked win. Had a ranked win against Vandy after that, got their revenge against Vanderbilt. Had a ranked win against Missouri, then had another ranked win against Tennessee, and then you're thinking, man, Alabama looks like one of the best teams in college football again. And then you're like, the wheels can't fall off. And what happened? The wheels fell off. And it fell off against South Carolina. Did they win? Sure. Did they look good doing it? No. The wheels fell off. And then LSU was like, okay, they won. Still didn't look good. It's progressively just getting worse. Then they finally collapsed against Oklahoma, lost that game. Didn't really look good against Eastern Illinois. Then they played Auburn. Played Auburn at good first half, kind of iffy in the second half. They ended up playing in the SEC championship, got blown out by Georgia, ended up, finally figuring out being the first 3-loss non-conference champion to make the college football playoff against Oklahoma. They went to Norman, got revenge on them, didn't have a good first half. They had to come back from a 17-point deficit, and then the eventual national champion Indiana Hoosiers ended up blowing them out in the Rose Bowl. So, it was a good, if you want to count, okay, we made it to the college ball playoff, made it to the Rose Bowl. Yay. Okay, that's fine. Good situation there. But not really if you're the Alabama fan, you're looking and you're like, this is not the ideal situation for us. We need to be winning the Rose Bowl against Indiana, not getting blown out and suffering the largest postseason ball loss in history for us. So in 2026, a lot of this was due to, in my opinion, lack of toughness. I'll get into my three in a minute. I want to start with you, Trent. For Alabama, in your eyes, what are you expecting to see from them in spring? Because I know their A-Day is on April 11th. We have that. That's in a month. And then around mid-March, in a couple of weeks maybe, is when their practices officially start. So what do you want to see from them heading into spring?
So I think the first thing with Bama, again, when you talk about toughness, I would be remiss not to mention the run game. I think that has been a big thing for them and a big target, especially going into spring training. I think that should be something they highlight very heavily. Unfortunately, losing out on Hollywood Smothers to Texas, kind of a big deal for them. They really needed a feature back. Now they're going to be splitting reps between Hill, Riley, and Deere. That's a little bit, they've had some volume. They've definitely had some carries, but they're missing that fortified star back that they've had in the past. I think that can be really heavily negated with schematics. I think if you change a lot of your run game and a lot of the power run that they were doing last season, I think you can really highlight these backs in a pretty significant way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's going to come down to their offensive line cohesion, their new acquisitions, especially in the portal. They're getting some guys from Michigan, some guys from your home state of Mississippi. So we will see, how that goes and how that moves forward. But I think especially with the toughness and the run game aspect, that would be my primary thing to look at for them. But, in terms of the back two, in terms of your 2 and 3, I'd definitely be looking at Ryan Williams. I think he had a pretty drastic drop-off in this year. I think he, if I'm not correct, led the FBS in drops. He really struggled with that. His production was still there. He was 14.1 yards, a catch. So he was really still there when he was targeted, but he took a back seat to a lot of guys later in the season, Latsier Brooks being one of them, especially towards the end of that Auburn game. That looked to be the guy going forward, and he had a great game against OU as well. So I think you definitely pay attention to that receiver room as well and how that goes going forward. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the quarterback, and that is really the big thing for me to pay attention to is your big battle between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. I honestly anticipated Keelan Russell not being in an Alabama uniform this year. I've kind of figured that they were going to hand off the reins to Austin Mack, especially after, that giving him some looks versus Indiana. I know that Ty Simpson was struggling with some injuries and really did not have an excellent game from the start. But I think, Austin Mack, he's, junior redshirt, 4-star, but I think you're really looking to that redshirt freshman Keelan Russell with the 5-star. I think he is someone, even last year, there were rumblings that he was doing quite well against Ty Simpson in that QB battle as well. So I think I'm anticipating he'll get the start, but ultimately at the end of the day, those are two very, very different quarterbacks, and it's going to come down to identity and toughness, and I think it's going to have to start with the quarterback position.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that to piggyback off you, that's kind of like one of the first things I was going to say, honestly. The first thing, and it's a lot of it is on the O-line. We're going to get to that here in a little bit, but there's a lot of things that we want to see out of Alabama, quarterback being one of them. So, I mean, I'll kick it off with the 3 that I think, and then we'll kind of wrap up and move on to, the other 3 teams that we're talking about here. But number 1, I do want to see who's going to start at quarterback for them. I do want to see if Austin Mack can edge out Keelan Russell. I know Keelan Russell is probably the future of that team. Why can't the future be now? I know that's what a lot of people are going to start asking, but I think, and this is probably an underrated thing to say. I don't know if a lot of people have mentioned this a lot. I don't think Austin Mack did all that bad against Indiana. That's just me. I think he made some good plays. He made some all right plays. The thing is, you can't really sit and say, "Oh, he played great." It's hard to say that when you're getting beat, 38-3 in the game.
Yeah,
like, when you're getting blown out that bad, it's gonna be hard to sit there and say, you know what? Yeah, he's doing phenomenal. Strike the pose, right? But he made some good plays, right? So I think that's one. I mean, I really do like Keelan Russell. He's athletic, man. I watched him play in high school. He's got a cannon for an arm. Um, I did watch some of him in spring practice. Yes, he's decision making is key, but also at the same time, though, he's a freshman, right? So maybe let's just we'll pump the brakes on that, but we'll just see him develop a little bit more. I kind of want to see who wins that battle and who edges out that battle. Right now, a lot of people are going to be you're saying, okay, Keelan Russell. I think I'm going to edge out Austin Mack in this one. I think Austin Mack gets the nod so far. Y'all can clip me, or whoever's watching me, clip me. I don't care. But I think Austin Mack gets the nod so far. I really do. I think he's got a little bit more experience, and I think that Keelan Russell he'll be close, but I think it'll be Austin Mack's job to lose for now. But we'll see what happens come mid-March. That's number one. Number two, offensive line. We recap the quarterfinals together, and you remember what I said. The offensive line was just right. It was one of those things where you look and you're like, come on, man. No. Where is Alabama's toughness? Right, the trenches has been one of those things with Alabama that you look at and you're like, man, tough on the trenches, tough on the offensive line and defensive line. That is what I'm used to seeing from Alabama. On the offensive line, we didn't get that a lot this year. I know Caden Proctor, elite last year, but still, he can't do it by himself. All right, there's the whole offensive line as a unit was not present. All right, it just wasn't there. Run blocking, pass blocking, just weren't there. I want to see how that O-line is going to develop. Honestly, they have Javen James coming in from Mississippi State. Yep. He started 21 games in his 2 seasons that he spent with Akron and Mississippi State. That's a really good late addition to the in the portal. I think just overall, and I can get your thoughts on this before I move on to my third point, but I think that the offensive line to me is the crucial part for Alabama's spring. Like, I think that's the honestly, we can move that to the number one point if we wanted to. We need to see really good offensive line play from Alabama.
I think that's completely fair. I think my only kind of reservation about that would be, I think Coach DeBoer kind of wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted to immediately jump to, all right, I'm in, my Saban later half. I'm really focusing on skill positions, really focusing on high-level recruiting, really focusing on a big name at quarterback. I think they see a lot of a vision almost similar to what they had freshman year out of Jalen Hurts with Keelan Russell. I think they see that mobility and they see that athleticism, but he has not invested in the fundamentals in the way that Saban did. Saban was a genius at this. He always came and had an offensive line that was ready to play each and every week. Even his depth, when he had problems with injuries, I never noticed a steep decline in the productivity of the offensive line. I see that with DeBoer right out the gate, both seasons, as a matter of fact. I think Jalen Milroe really was running for his life at first, too, when he got into the DeBoer system, and I wager that that's likely why he probably didn't stay that extra year, is he didn't see a potential for a jump in production. And I think even with Simpson, I saw a lot of areas where, especially early on in the season, when the offensive line really had that cohesion, he was a different quarterback than towards the end of the season when you saw a lot of gaps in production, especially with the interior of the offensive line. I think Caden Proctor was really great for the most part. I think he had good protection on that left side, but even then, you saw it with the run game. I think the run game, really, Alabama running backs have been relatively interchangeable, each and every one of them making an appearance in the pros, as a matter of fact, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it was because they had that offensive line to boost that production and boost that athleticism out of each and every one of those running backs, even winning a Heisman with Henry. And I don't see that. I don't see that yet with Coach DeBoer.
I know they just hired Adrian Clem from USC. He has their new O-line coach. He was a recent offensive analyst for USC. And on the notes here, he brings experience from the New England Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Oregon, UCLA, and USC. So he's been pretty much all over the place, working with the interior of the offensive line. Let's see if this move helps them. Maybe it can bring some sort of toughness to the offensive line. I think, to me, who's going to win the quarterback battle and then the offensive line, those are the two things that I kind of want to see. I'm not really scared. A lot of people are going to say, this is a straight offensive spring for you guys. Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm not really as much worried about their defense. Now, here's
Nope.
the deal. I think the third and final thing that I got on what I want to see is it's a fairly young team.
Mhm.
How many of those young players are going to step up? I know that seems kind of like a mental thing, but that's the third and final thing that I got on what I want to see from Alabama this spring. How are these young players going to step up? Because I know there's a lot of young players on that team. It's not. I would highly doubt. Okay, going into August, and it would not shock me at all. It would probably shock most. It wouldn't shock me that Alabama is around 17, 18 when week one hits, when the rankings come out.
Yep.
I just think that it's because of how young the team is, and it's just a little bit of a different vibe going into year 3 for Kalen DeBoer than like, okay, veteran quarterback, we got a bunch of interior offensive linemen that's, seasoned and turned out to be obviously not so great, obviously. But you look at the defense and that season with Deontay Lawson, but now guys like that, Tim Kenyon, all those guys gone, right? And you're like, okay, very fairly young team. Let's see who steps up, right? So I think that's the third and final thing for me on what I want to see from Alabama this spring on how many of the young players are going to step up and make an impact right away. That's all right. By week one, we should know like this kid can be a playmaker.
I think that's an excellent point too, especially about mentality, because you're going to want to see that poise from those young players to really stabilize the team going forward. And I think the mentality is a really good point, especially considering that I don't think that Alabama mentality has been there at all since DeBoer has taken his seat at the head coaching spot. And I think that that's something going forward that Alabama fans are going to really want to see.
Yeah, 100%. And guys, that's really the three things that we want to see from Alabama come spring. We want to see, number one, who's going to win the quarterback battle? Number two, mentality. Who are the teams that are going to step up, or the players that are going to step up? I know it's a young team. Some of those young players that are going to make an impact early on for this team coming into 2026. And then number three, obviously, the offensive line. Can they find toughness? That's the number one thing I want to see. Can Alabama find toughness? Not just with the O-line, but overall. That could be a point A and point B for the third point there. Can they find toughness? Offensive line, and can they find toughness? That's another one there. But that's our spring outlook on Alabama. They have their spring game April 11th. So that's when they'll end their spring. We'll see how they do. We'll give a grade, come early April, by mid-April, we'll see what happens there. But with Alabama, but overall, we will get to that, and when we do our spring results on Alabama. So next up, we got 3 more to go. LSU. LSU is a team that, 2025 going in. You look at them and you watch them against Clemson. It's like they finally got a season opening win under Brian Kelly, right? And they finally got a season opening win. I mean, I even argued it. They're the best team in college football week one. I mean, defense is on point. And then you come, after that Vanderbilt loss, and you're thinking, holy smokes, they're the best team in college football, right? And you're like, oh man. So it's a entirely different thing for when you see week one in September to late September, right? So because when you look at LSU, you're thinking when they start off, they look good. They're talented. Their defense is solid with Blake Baker and Harold Perkins, Whit Weeks. Those guys are solid. Mansour Delane at the defensive back position. They are solid. And then you look at their offense, you're like, that ain't right. Something's a little off. Like they look a little bit like lethargic, like slow a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, just one game. Then it bleeds into Louisiana Tech, and you're thinking, okay, well, shoot. I mean, okay, it's Louisiana Tech. They had a rough couple of weeks. You'll be fine against Florida, right? Sure enough, it's bleeding into Florida, and you're like, oh, okay, we're starting to worry a little bit here. We're in 3 weeks. We're seeing great defense, but we got Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. They're a good offensive team, obviously, under Lane Kiffin. What are we going to do here? And then they have an offensive showcase against Southeastern Louisiana. They put up 56 points or whatever. You're like, okay, if they play like this against Ole Miss, they're going to win. What happens? They lose the next week, and they play Ole Miss, and they really couldn't keep up. I mean, offensively. I mean, defensively, they kept up, and that's why the game was closer. But offensively, they couldn't really go play to play and kind of playbook to playbook with that coaching staff, because Ole Miss's coaching staff, who, kind of funny, now at LSU, is all, you just can't, it's all mismatched, right? It's all mismatched. Like, it's a totally different coaching staff. Brian Kelly's LSU offensive coaching staff cannot outcoach Ole Miss's coaching staff with Lane Kiffin on offense. They just can't do it. Fast forward, we get the A&M game, and then you're like, you hear all the chants. If you remember correctly, if you heard the chants during the game in Baton Rouge, that was rough. Then all of a sudden, he gets let go the next day, and then they're scrambling, oh, who's going to be the next coach? I know, Lane Kiffin. That's who we want, right? And everyone was like, nah, he ain't going to LSU. It's going to be either Florida or he's going to stay at Ole Miss. I said, and I quote, you guys can go back and listen to me, that I think that he will choose LSU or Florida. I said because it's a football-wise, he will choose LSU or Florida. Not city-wise, because obviously it's like Florida, beautiful, palm trees. You want to stay flip-flops, shorts. You want to be at Florida, right? But it's about football. Football only. Facilities, championships, prestige. LSU over Florida it's a little bit different. No pun intended at Lane Kiffin. I'll clip that one for Lane Kiffin, just different. And then sure enough, he ends up going, after the much debate saga, Lane Kiffin ends up going to LSU. They end up having the number 1 portal class. They end up portal kinging it up, and he ends up, delivering pretty much an elite class, which includes quarterback Sam Leavitt, highly touted offensive lineman Jordan Seaton. He keeps Harlem Berry. He keeps Trades Green. Whit Weeks comes back on the defense. They get some guys on the defensive front as well to kind of bolster up that defensive line. You get DJ Pickett back, which is a huge get for them on the secondary. You also get a brand new bunch of receivers, i.e. Eugene Wilson III, Trey Brown. You get a bunch of guys at the receivers, J.C. Brown, a lot of guys at the position. Right? And you just bolster up that receiving core. So LSU looks on paper like they could be a team to, don't play with this team, right? You better come to show up against this LSU team on paper come fall. But sometimes that is not how it always works, right? So there's always still room to improve. So we'll start with you. What are some things that you want to see from LSU come spring? I know their practice starts March 24th. Highly doubt they have a spring game, but who knows? We'll see. And then their practice ends on April 24th. But what do you want to see from LSU this spring?
So I think if we're going to go by 3 points, I definitely think my main primary focus would be, as you said, you look at these teams on paper and they look great on paper, and really great on paper. I mean, you've got the number 1 transfer class. I mean, over Ole Miss, by the way, which is I'm sure Lane Kiffin is sitting somewhere in Baton Rouge really smiling about that one. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, are these players going to perform like they should? I think you mentioned Leavitt, Seaton, if I mispronounce the name, Prince Will Umenle. He was an edge rusher for Ole Miss, a really, really productive one too, at 45 tackles, 9 sacks on the season. He was tremendous for them. Little bit of a tampering issue when he decided to flip over to LSU, but, there always is these days. But I think that looking at these players, you got Jackson Harris out of Hawaii, Eugene Wilson on the receiving core. You bring back Caden Durham, who actually withdrew his bid from the portal. He initially was going to leave and then ended up staying. I imagine because they missed out on Kwan Lacey, if I had to guess. He knew that he was going to be able to get that production again with Harlem Berry as his power back behind him. And I think that seeing the possibility of these people performing in the positions that they're meant to perform is really my top overlook with LSU is, are we going to get a healthy Sam Leavitt? Are we going to get Jordan Seaton, improving his run blocking a little bit? He was really great in the pass blocking, missing some steps in the run blocking. I think we could see some improvement there. Is this receiving core going to be melding the way they should. I mean, we had Trey Wilson with, 10 TDs and over 1,000 yards. Jackson Harris, 12 touchdowns for Hawaii. We had some really big hitters coming into that receiving core. You've got your backs from last year. Are they going to be able to mend a little better behind that offensive line? Is Jordan Seaton going to give them the power rush that they're really hoping for, especially under Lane Kiffin? But ultimately, when you have all of these components coming together, there are going to be some people who shine and some people who don't. And I think that looking at that is going to be my main overlook for LSU, is going to be, how does that exactly work under Kiffin? My second, when it comes to LSU, would really be the coaching staff, ultimately. I think bringing in all of these new guys, I think you can confidently say that, Lane Kiffin is probably going to be a hit. He's really, really, especially with Ole Miss and his later college career, he has really become an offensive mind to highlight within the sport. I think he's really, his philosophy on, his relationships with other coaches and players has changed quite a bit since when he was younger, and it's really improved a lot of his repertoire within the community, and I think that that's a big thing for him. But, you're bringing back Charlie Weiss now from Ole Miss. You finally get to have him in the building. You're bringing back Blake Baker, actually, as DC from the Brian Kelly era, which, you know what, I'm glad he's confident. I hope it works out, surely, but I think ultimately, I don't know that I would have kept any holdovers from that Brian Kelly era. That was a really, really ugly time for LSU, and I think that would have been something I may have held off on. But, to be seen. He's bringing back a lot of guys. He's, Whit Weeks obviously coming back. McKinley and Spears are returning on that defensive line. I think they've got a lot of great people coming in and a lot of great new transfers, and I'm excited to see how they work with the coaching staff specifically. I think my third point, honestly, would really be, again, the running backs. I think that they were a big question mark last year. You didn't really get that production from Caden Durham that you wanted, but you know what? The offensive line wasn't there either. Nussmeier was hurt for a majority of the season. You constantly had this aura of mediocrity floating from Brian Kelly and the coaching staff. I think a lot of people, especially the players, were really disappointed about that. And I think to see them maybe be revitalized under Lane Kiffin is something to be really excited about. But ultimately, it's going to come down to does the new transfer class perform the way that expectations are looking at them?
Honestly, you kind of hit the nail on the head, too, with the running game. And that was actually going to be one of my points, too. It's interesting because I think Blake Baker is the only bright spot, and the defensive staff really the only bright spot about Brian Kelly's tenure, honestly. I think Blake Baker's a solid defensive coordinator, dude. I really do. Yeah. I think that Blake Baker and Lane Kiffin together is going to be a tandem. I really do. With Charlie Weiss. I think it's going to be a really good trio there. But, and who knows? I mean, look, we can't sit there and say, okay, defenses are going to get scored on. It's just how the games operate. It's how the games work. It's just how football is, But if you're getting scored on constantly and you're getting 500 yards put up on you each game, then that's a problem, right? Blake Baker didn't really have that.
No.
Right? He didn't have that unless it was, 2024 against Alabama, right? That was one of the only games he had that. But he also didn't have a lot of the recruits that he had in 2025. So it's progressively getting better and better and better. Now Blake Baker is one of the best coordinators in the conference, and maybe could be one of the best in college football if the defense keeps holding up the way it does.
Yep.
So I'm not really worried with the defense as much, especially with the secondary. And Corey Raymond's back. Jake Olson's there. I mean, they got a lot of guys there. I think DJ Pickett's going to be a really good corner or safety for them. Good in the secondary for them. I really do. Not really worried about that. Not really worried about McKinley and Spears. I'm not really worried about Whit Weeks at linebacker leading that front. I know Zach will play. His brother, Zach Weeks, will play a little bit as well. I'm not really worried about all of them. I'm concerned about the O-line. I know Seaton's there. I know Braylon Moore's back. That line is led by them too. I want to see as a cohesive unit, number one, for LSU, how will that line hold up? I know it was rough last year. Everyone's going to say, the reason why Nussmeier's playing the way he was, and it's because of Nussmeier being bad. Yeah, okay, look, fair. Nussmeier did not have the best decision-making in certain moments. Understandable. I would like to give him a little bit of grace because that offensive line wasn't really the best. They weren't really a cohesive unit. Can the offensive line be a cohesive unit? That's number one. Number 2 is the running backs. I want to see the running game. I want to see how how it operates. I like Caden Durham. I think Harlem Berry should probably get the starting reps. I think Harlem Berry is a really good running back. I think he should be the number 1 running back on LSU's depth chart come fall and come spring, but come fall. Number 2, I would like to see both of them really kind of pick it up a little bit. I know Berry did really well in certain plays. He did it against Houston, did it against Ole Miss. He put them in 19. He gave them 19 points. Put it up on them against Ole Miss in Week 5 last year. They couldn't score, but Harlem Berry helped them score. So Harlem Berry, with that little bit of flash and that little bit of life, he brings a life to that offense. So let him be that life, right? Also, push the running game a little bit more. I would like to see that, because last year, Brian Kelly and that offense did not push the running game at all. When the running game went bad, it went south within like 1 or 2 plays. They gave up on it. Yep. And you don't give up on that. You keep pushing until you find a running lane, until you find room to go and run. Because 1 yard will eventually turn into 2 yards. 2 yards will eventually turn into 5 yards. 5 yards will eventually turn into 17 yards eventually, because you're going to keep tiring that defense out by running the ball down their throats. It happens. So I want to see what the running game is like for LSU at number 2. Number 3, for me, I like Trent Green. To me, he's probably one of the best tight ends in all of college football, or close to it in college football. He's dynamic. Probably the best of the SEC coming into this year. I don't know about all of college football yet, but he's one of them. He's good. Elite, even. I want to see who's going to help out around him. I know you have more receivers through that portal class. I want to see if they make a difference. I want to see if Wilson makes a difference. Eugene Wilson makes a difference. I want to see if J.C. Brown makes a difference. Speedster. I want to see if he makes a difference. And I want to see how they're going to gel together, besides kind of just helping Trent Green just take the workload off a little bit. He was their leading receiver last year, pretty much.
Yep.
So I kind of want to see how they help him out and kind of balance everything out, helping take the load off of him. Because I know they're going to use Trent Green. Who wouldn't want to use a Trent Green? He contested catch, he's going to get the ball. But
absolutely,
you still need to balance it out. And I want to see if there's more balance in the receiving room. That's what I want to see. Those are the 3 things that I mainly want to see. An alternate point, I kind of want to see how healthy Sam Levitt is truly. That's another really bonus point that I got. I want to see how healthy Sam Levitt is. I know he's limited due to his foot injury that he suffered at Arizona State. I know that he is limited in practice right now. He's going through 7-on-7s, but he's not full-on scrimmaging. I want to see how healthy he is going into the spring. So is there any final thoughts on LSU before we move on to Clemson and Florida State?
So when you mentioned Trent Green, I would like to say that Winston Watkins may be a name to keep your eyes on. He is coming out of Ole Miss, played all 15 games last year. He only caught a touchdown, but you know what? As a true freshman playing all 15 games, that really is quite the achievement. And I think that is something to really pay attention to, especially because he is a Kiffin recruit. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that melds together and whether or not maybe there's some more depth in that receiver room than we really think there is.
Oh, 100%. And not only that, because I maybe forgot to mention that. We were talking about my third point, balancing the receivers and helping out Trent Green. He's really high on Winnie Watkins. Yep. He was high on him at Ole Miss. He said, I'm not going to tell you about him, because if I tell somebody about him, they're going to try to tamper with me and transfer, and he started making jokes about it. But it shows how high he is on Watkins.
Yep.
So very interesting point that you made there. I'm glad you made that point, because Watkins could be a feature player in this offense come fall. So we'll see what happens there.
He very well could.
That's really it for LSU. That's our spring outlook for LSU. Number 1, I mean, for me, I would like to see if the offensive line can be a cohesive unit. I want to see about the number 2. I want to see about the running game. I want to see if the running game could, gel and finally, just utilize the running game more and push the running game a little bit more. And then number 3, balance the receiving room to help out Trent Green, because we need more of that. I'm not too worried about the defense. I know. Let me just say this: we kind of ended Bama and LSU the same way. I'm more worried about Bama's defense than LSU's defense at this
Really?
point. Right now, yeah. That's just my point right now.
Okay. I think that's interesting.
I think they're both talented, and I think they're both young, but I'm a little bit more worried about Bama's defense right now at this point in time. Right now. A lot of people will probably disagree with me on that, but we'll see what happens. That is LSU's spring outlook for us. And now, we're going to jump right into the two teams in the ACC. We did our SEC teams, Alabama, LSU. I know LSU's spring practice will start March 24th, a couple of weeks. It'll end in a month exactly, April 24th. But we'll see how it happens. We'll do our spring results on LSU here within a month. So let's talk about our ACC teams. Done with the SEC for a little bit. Let's wrap it up with two teams for the ACC. And these two teams, man, and we'll start with one first. We'll start with Clemson first here in the ACC. I know we're worried about these two teams. This is one of the teams you're looking at and you're like, and I posted a tweet on this. Out of the two teams, like one team you're concerned about and one team you're excited about watching in spring football. Who are those two teams in the ACC? I posted a tweet on that, question of the day. Sometimes I get comments, but a lot I get messages from. Clemson was a team that I got some messages from about, okay, I'm a little bit concerned about. That's from what I've seen from teams. I'm not saying that I am or anything, but I'm saying that's what I got from them. And random people who've listened to the show, which, guys, thank you for listening to the show. For Clemson, yeah, they were a team that had probably the most returning production last year. K. Klubnik coming back at quarterback. You had guys like Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore back there, and you're looking at them and you're like, man, this receiving core, dude. Moore, Wesco, Williams, solid. You got K. Klubnik at, quarterback, Adam Randall at running back, and that offensive line is going to hold up. And, Clemson's preseason national champion. They look great. They go 0-1 against LSU. They lose to LSU. A lot of people were picking them to be LSU. I did not. I picked LSU to win that game. But I still picked out Clemson to go to the ACC championship. I said they were going to beat Georgia Tech in week 3. Turns out they ended up not beating Georgia Tech in week 3. And you're like, okay. Like, you look at their defense, they're all right. Their offense is just a little bit sluggish, which is weird because they're so talented. You're almost scratching your head and you're wondering, what is the deal with Clemson? Because they're so talented. And you're looking at them and you're like, this is a team that could go to the playoff if they wanted to, win the ACC title game if they wanted to. And they didn't. They just started losing some games that they didn't necessarily need to lose. A few weeks back, I had my Frenzy's top 50 games of the 2025 college football season. I picked number 20 was Duke and Clemson. They had a high-scoring affair with Duke at Clemson. It was in Death Valley. They lost that game by a point. And you're thinking, that's weird. They normally don't lose to Duke, right? But it was a season like that for Clemson, right? They would just lose games like that. And you're thinking, this is interesting, man. It's weird. Like, the season they had was weird. Now, honestly, a lot of it can come from, okay, he's not using the portal very well. He never used the portal. And I understand that. I get it from what happened back in January, February, right? With the tampering, all that stuff. We talked about that weeks back. But I get all that. I get how Clemson is. I get how he operates Clemson. Yes, he's going to need to adapt. And he's going to need to adapt, and he's going to need to adapt fairly well in order to bring Clemson back to where they were in the mid-2010s to, how it can be right now, because if you don't adapt to today's college football, you're not going to get back to the glory days of the mid-2010s, right? So, Clemson's in a very interesting spot, Trent. Very interesting spot. They let go of Garrett Riley. They get Chad Morris back. The early 2010s, they're bringing back some of that flashiness, they had with D-Hop, and you had with Sammy Watkins back with Chad Morris there, the OC again. You're bringing some of that back. So, I want to start with you with Clemson and your thoughts on them entering the spring. What do you want to see from them this spring? How do you overall your thoughts on Clemson and how do you feel about them going into this spring? What do you want to see from them in the spring? Are you concerned? Are you excited? Are you like in between? Or
so I'm careful with Clemson because I think to me they're a bit of a question mark. I see potential for there to be some panic in the building. I think the big thing with Clemson for me coming into this season is we just got out of the SEC and talked about all the physical attributes and all the new transfer portal acquisitions. And I think with Clemson, it's actually more mental. I think there is something lingering with the possibility of bleeding into this season, especially from last season, that needs to be addressed. And that is that Clemson became the pedestal in which real ACC teams rose to the top on. You notice it's Miami, like you mentioned, Duke, like you mentioned, and that's not even talking about Georgia Tech, who was leading early on the ACC for many, many weeks. That's not mentioning SMU, who became a surprise player towards the end of the year. They really paved the way for so many other teams to have success in the ACC, and I think that that's something, especially making the playoffs in the fashion that they did the previous year, really becoming kind of a surprise towards the end of the season, especially after, losing a couple big important games down the line. I think that that's something that needs to be addressed by the coaching staff. I think Dabo really needs to look in the mirror and see that if that's something, if that is the mental encapsulation of last season, if you allow that to bleed into a year where, to be honest with you, on paper, they're not returning the kind of talent that they did the previous year. You're really looking at more of a reload for Dabo Swinney. You're looking at a lot of guys who have not seen a lot of snaps. I mean, with the exemption of TJ Moore, you're looking at an entirely new QB room. You're looking at entirely new running backs. You're returning a couple of key receivers, which I think is great, but ultimately you're revamping an O-line yet again. You're really switching out a lot of key pieces. I mean, Chad Morris, over Garrett Riley, I'd be remiss to say we already discussed that on a previous podcast, but I think there's so much change in the building that Dabo really needs to grab the reins and get this team on the right track. And I think that starts mentally. Some things that I can see, kind of on paper that I would look at is I would say they definitely need some more depth. I think that Chris Johnson Jr. was a good move for the running backs room for sure. I think that that's going to be something that they're going to really want in their back pocket, especially if, maybe they're not getting the kind of production from quarterback that they were seeing from Klubnik. I believe they're going to move on to Christian Vizino, which is, I think that's an interesting move. He hasn't had a lot of snaps. He really hasn't had a lot of, on the field live action playing time, but I think that that'll be something to pay attention to for sure. I still see areas though, especially with the defense. You're bringing back a lot of returners, but I think with, key losses like your especially the big one with Luke Farrelly. I mean, that was a massive deal to them this offseason. Dabo was steaming out the ears about that one. He was very unhappy with Pete Golding for poaching his player. I personally thought he was going to go to the NCAA about it. That didn't end up happening, but I think you've got to really get things stable with Clemson. I could see realistically maybe between 7 and 9 wins again. I could see them having a fruitful season, but I don't see the possibility of a 10 and 2 playoff appearance. I don't see the possibility of, a puncher's chance at the ACC championship. I think you have a really stacked ACC this year, especially with the way that SMU and Miami are going to look this year. And I think that with the kind of production that you're bringing in, Dabo Swinney just really needs to look to bring stability back. I think he's decided with his philosophy as my number 3 highlight, I think he's really decided to not utilize the transfer portal. We've seen a couple years of this now. He really has just not, that has not been a priority for him, and that's totally okay. I think you can still operate a program in a really worthwhile way without utilizing the transfer portal, but I think ultimately he's going to really have to breed a culture of stability in his success, and I think that is something last year that we did not see.
Oh, yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. And Clemson's one of those teams where it's like, okay, probably preseason you should have went and gone to the playoff with as much talent you're returning and you're coming back with, right? And now you're like, oh no, like you're losing a lot, and it's like this is the season where you're kind of rebuilding, and it's like now what? But yet again, who knows? We may be in for the biggest shock.
Yeah, you never know. That's tough to come off of though. You get a 7-6 season with the kind of talent that they had brought back. I think they were really hoping to, even return in that secondary spot, even if Miami, ended up somehow winning the ACC, which oddly enough they didn't. They actually paved the way for Duke to win the ACC, but I think that looking at it from that lens, you see this season as like, okay, we're kind of just, I think Clemson fans should really just be praying for between 7 to 9 wins. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't see a playoff appearance, but 7 to 9 wins I think would be Dabo Swinney getting this program on the right track.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's kind of segueing into what we were going to talk about for my number one point, the quarterback spot.
Yeah.
I want to see what's going to happen with the quarterback spot. I know that Christopher Vizina is probably going to be the front runner for that job. He was backing up Kay Klubnik for the past couple of years, and it's looking like it may be his time. I'm a lot of people are going to say, like, with him, that he's got no experience, all this stuff, and he may not, but I'm not. I'm a fan. Like, I'm not like, not sold on him. I think I'm pretty sold on him. I think he's made some in the games that he's played and some of the stuff that he's said, like he's done. I've been a fan. I like some of the plays he's made. I like some of the throws he's made, some of the decisions that he's made. I think he can get better and he can develop more because he needs to play more. Obviously, it's all about experience with him. But I think if you play him, he may be your guy. Really.
Yeah.
I think he most likely will win the job. I know you got Chris Denson, and then I believe on here you have I think Tate Reynolds coming in from Arizona, freshman signee from Arizona, Tate Reynolds, and then Trent Pearman as well. That kind of rounds out the quarterback battle. But it's looking like Christopher Vizina will probably end up getting the nod because he knows the system more well. Maybe. I mean, I know it's a whole different system with Chad Morris, but he knows the Clemson Dabo Swinney type offense that he can run it a little bit. So, okay. I think number one to me, I want to see how the quarterbacks play. I want to see if Christopher Vizina wins the job. That's number one. Who knows? We may not even see until fall camp, but it would be cool to see just look how the quarterbacks play, especially during the spring game, because their spring game is on, I believe, March 28th. March 28th in the year of our Lord 2026. So that's number one. I want to see how Chris Johnson does at the running back spot. I think in the running game as well, how it's going to take off, especially with Adam Randall being gone. I want to see how if Johnson takes up the spot and what the running game is going to look like there. It seems like they lose running backs almost every year. It seems like because they lost Will Shipley, then they lost Adam Randall again. It's like, oh man, like
really
you got a good thing going. Now you got to get another running back. But I kind of want to see how that's going. I want to see how the running game is going to go for Clemson. Then last but not least, I want to see what the D line looks like. They're losing some depth of the D line. Finally, Joel, you're talking about some defense here, but I want to see some of the D-line. I want to see what the D-line's going to look like for Clemson. I know they brought some talent. I know they didn't utilize it very well, but some talent to the portal on the D-line. But I do want to see more of how the D-line's going to be now that, like, Peter Woods is gone and T.J. Parker's gone. I want to see how well they're going to be now that those two guys are gone and out of the picture. So to me, I want to see what the revamped defensive line is going to look like. That's number one. Number two, quarterback battle. And then number three, who is going to be the main guy at running back to run the rock for that Clemson offense. Especially, here's a last point, really, a point 3B kind of, right? I want to see how that offense looks under Chad Morris. I want to see how revamped and how, if it's going to look a lot better than it did last year under Garrett Riley, and if they're going to go back to that prominence of the mid-2010s, early 2010s Clemson offensive look. So under Chad Morris, right? So I want to see how that looks, and I want to see how they are in the spring. I think the one thing, though, that I do want to think about, just think about is receivers. I know they lose Williams, but they also get Wesco back, right? I think another issue there too is who's going to be their next guy up besides just Wesco and Moore? I know they get Wesco and Moore back, but who's going to be their next guy up? That's another thing I was thinking about too. So that pause right there, I was thinking, okay, I could add another point there. Can they get another guy like an impact? Kind of like what I mentioned about Bama. Make an impact right away. Can Clemson have that guy at receiver as well? So you can also think about that point with Clemson there too. But overall, overall, that's pretty much our spring outlook for Clemson. We'll see our spring results for Clemson coming up in, about a month. Really, not really. Yeah, about a month. They got their spring game, and they end their spring March 28th. They have a very early spring game. It's 1 Eastern, 12 Central time. Very early end to their spring. But hey, it happens. You get a lot of those years where it's like, you know what, we're going to start it now, get it over with, and get it out of the way and knock it out. But Clemson, that's our spring outlook on them. We will give you our spring results on them within the next few weeks. Last but not least, and we'll wrap everything up, Florida State, a team that we are very interested in. And not only interested in, you can kind of hit the panic button on them a little bit. Maybe. Yeah, you could. There's a lot. Yeah, the season didn't really. Okay, it started off great. They beat Alabama. You're looking at them and you're like, oh, okay, right? Well, you beat Alabama and you're, your sky's the limit. You're scoring points on Kent State and you're like, you're doing really well early on, and then Virginia happens and they lose to Virginia, which was a phenomenal football game, by the way.
It was.
It was a top 5 game in my Frenzy top 50 games of the 2025 season a few weeks ago. But man, interesting game. But nonetheless, they lose that game, then they start losing a little bit more. They lose to Miami. A lot of people thought Florida State was gonna beat Miami that game. I was like, I don't know what y'all saw in that, dog. I thought Miami was gonna win the game personally, but that was a tough one for them. Then they just started going downhill. Lost to Stanford, which a loss they really shouldn't have had. And then you're thinking at this point, is this really the end of the road for Mike Norvell? It seems like this team is just not there, right? It just doesn't seem like it's a unit anymore. Like, it just doesn't seem like people just seem like they've checked out, if that makes sense. That's what we saw a lot last year. And then the news broke that they're keeping Mike Norvell. They're keeping him. He's still their head coach in 2026. Probably a lot. And I already said that. They probably couldn't afford to pay him. I said that last season or around November when it was announced. And then the addition of Gus Malzahn. He is now retired as coach, and he's no longer coaching. So offensive coordinator is now, Tim Harris Jr., but the play caller will be Mike Norvell. So Mike Norvell is going to call the plays come 2026. Very interesting spring outlook for Florida State. I have my thoughts. Trent, I'll start with you. What is your thoughts on Florida State?
So I think this one's going to get me a lot of haters in Florida State, but I think my 3 points are honestly all the same, and it's panic, panic, panic. I don't see any potential here. And as a matter of fact, I see quite the opposite. And this goes a while back for me because especially on that 2023 snub, I was an FSU truther all the way. I was like, that's your playoff team, regardless of what happened with Jordan Travis. And it's unfortunate we got to talk about that, but it still lives rent-free in this team's identity and in Coach Norvell's head. And you can tell by the way they play. They have a really tragic 2024 season. You really see a lot of dips in production from almost every single position group. 2025 started off great. And unfortunately, this is where it gets personal for me. I yet again got sucked into the FSU hype. I saw this team out the gate with Alabama, and I said, you know what? They've got a dynamic run game. They've got a dynamic quarterback with the potential for run, which really did open up the run game in many ways. And that's something Gus Malzahn liked to lean on as an offensive coordinator. And then we get to the Virginia game, and you get that Deuce Robinson bobble in the end zone. Things go awry. You get Virginia going down to the wire and upsetting them in a game that should have realistically never been close. We didn't know what Virginia was. We didn't know the potential Virginia had to climb the ranks. We didn't know what the ACC was going to offer in terms of a champ, and whether that would have been Miami, whether that was going to be, an SMU. Clemson even was still, well live by that time period. And I think to see this happen twice with FSU, to where you feel, okay, we're getting some stability back. Mike Norvell's kind of getting some, appealing to the greater minds in the building. I think Gus Malzahn leaving that program just yet again points out that there is a serious problem with the identity of that program. I think they are losing money rapidly. They don't have the money to pay off Norvell, which I think internally, if you really look at what's going on with the boosters and their relationship with Norvell, I think they want him gone. I think they have wanted him gone. I think they will continue to want him gone. But I could see very easily a Bob Stoops situation like out in Kentucky where Mike Norvell is there for almost the entirety of his contract because they just cannot afford to pay off the ridiculous decision to give Mike Norvell that kind of money over the course of, I think it was 8 to 10 years, a seriously massive contract that you now do not have the money as a program to pay. He's losing recruits like crazy. He's really had a hard time appealing to players. And honestly, I think that him taking over play calling duties is actually a step in the wrong direction. I think he should be delegating much more. I think he should have more of a staunch stance as a head coach. He should really be, kind of bulking up to the criticism and telling people who's who and what's what and telling them that he's going to get this program on the right track. But looking at who they have available to them, I mean, they get guys like Trey Wisner, out of the running back spot, Ashton Daniels at the quarterback spot, who I'll come back to here in a bit. But I just do not see, I don't see there being the possibility for cohesion because it feels like it's a new cast and crew every year. And every single time we're back in the same conversation. We're at, 5-7 FSU, missing a bowl game after beating Alabama, after beating one of these amazing teams, after barely missing the playoffs. It's just, I think that them being so close to these milestones has really messed with the heads of many players on that team, with Mike Norvell, with the boosters, and with the identity of that football program as a whole. Now, on a positive note, just to give them something to believe in, I think Ashton Daniels was a decent pickup. I see potential there, especially if you really get on a roll. But I think that, you play, like you mentioned, you play SMU on Labor Day weekend, and then you get your bye week and you're back in Tuscaloosa playing Alabama. I think if that's 2 losses, your season's kind of dead in the water right there. And I think that that's not something to look forward to, especially when you start the ACC off with an incredibly hard schedule, especially those first 5 games coming out of, your game against Alabama and Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, getting Trey Wisner was a really good pickup, though.
I agree.
I'll admit what you say. I think that's a good pickup. Ashton Daniels, we'll see how that's going to go as well. I know coming from Stanford to Auburn, now there to Florida State. Receiving core revamped a little bit. Offensive line revamped a little bit. Some pieces that are revamped a little bit. But we'll see how it bolsters up. I think defensively as well, going to be bolstered up a little bit as well, especially at the linebacker spot. I want that's number one for me. I want to see what the linebackers are going to do, what's going to happen there, and what's going to happen in that linebacker area. Who's going to step up to the linebacker spot for Florida State? That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, I do want to see how the offense is going to look. I mean, I'm curious about the play calling there, how that's going to shape effect, especially with the tough schedule they got coming up in the fall. I want to see how they look in the spring and how offensively they can revamp, especially under Mike Norvell calling the plays. And then number 3, and this is a big one. Honestly, can they be a unit? This is a more of a mentality type of thing, mental thing. Can they be a cohesive offensive unit? Can they grind it out and not check out? Because I think in a lot of moments at the back half of the year, they checked out. And can they stay the course, like we always say on this show? No pun intended, really, but okay, pun intended. Can they stay the course, and can they ride it out and not check out? Mentally, can they not check out? Those are the things that I kind of want to see. Can they grind it out during the spring, buy in mentally, and take that into the fall? That's what I want to see. And those are really my spring outlooks and my 3 points for Florida State overall. Is there any final thoughts you have on Florida State before we wrap up our episode here?
You know what? I would say as another, just because it was so negative on Florida State, I would say a small point of hope for them too is they do get Deuce Robinson back, which I think is really a great, returning player. I'm glad they get to, retain him. I didn't suspect they would. I'm kind of shocked that he actually ended up, going back to Tallahassee, but it's a little bit of a, it's kind of a waiting game with them. I think that looking at the past couple of seasons, and I hate to judge a new season off of what I've seen in the past, but I think unfortunately this has become Mike Norvell's identity. I think he looks lethargic. He looks like he has really lost the spark in his eye for coaching this program, and a program that, I mean, you even go back to the 2010s, they were dominant. They went to BCS bowls. They were relevant. This was a program that was, relevant to the point. They had Deion Sanders back in the day. This was an excellent program, and it really is kind of unfortunate to see that lack of production come this new generation, especially with NIL, where you would think, okay, like you said with Florida in terms of Lane Kiffin, Florida. Why wouldn't you want to go to Florida? It's a great state, beautiful. Your khaki shorts and your flip flops, enjoying the beach on the weekends. It seems like there's something wrong there. They're just not getting the kind of players, and as a matter of fact, they're losing the kind of players that could change the program. I will say, in terms of the defense, though, I would be relatively confident in that unit. I think that they're returning a lot of guys in terms of, especially like you mentioned, the linebacking core. I see potential there, but ultimately you're going to need an offense that's going to put up some points, and I don't see that with Florida.
Man, that was our spring outlooks on Florida State, honestly. It's been kind of a good episode, man. We went over the two SEC teams with Alabama, LSU, two ACC teams with Clemson, Florida State. And guys, we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again on Thursday. We are out of time right now. A big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage and some spring football coverage presented by us. For watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X, Instagram, and TikTok is at Pigskin_Frenzy. And the website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Man, we are super fired up for spring football. Obviously, kicking it off here today. Thursday, coming up, March 5th. We have Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and USC, all Big Ten, on the dock coming up this Thursday. Trent will be back with me. Trent will be here pretty much, I believe, for our spring outlooks entirely. So we're pumped, we're fired up, and we're ready to rock and roll for spring football. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and USC on Thursday, all Big Ten teams. Guys, we're so thankful for you guys tuning in each and every Tuesday and Thursday, for listening to us. Without you guys, we would not be here doing Pigskin Frenzy. So keep on subscribing, keep on following, and we're going to continue to deliver college ball content to you guys. And not only that, we are thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus for delivering us and putting us in this position to be just talking about college football and to talk about college ball, in general, and spring football. And not only that, just to spread his name across all platforms, because we give him all the glory and all the praise. Without him, we would not be here. So we praise him and glorify him across every show, including this one. Guys, that's Trent Ritchie. I'm Joel Norris, signing off. We will see you Thursday with more spring outlooks with Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and USC. See you Thursday. We're signing off. Everybody out there, please and always stay the course.